So I said, no one needs 30 donuts. That's get a dozen, get 2 dozen. What are we gonna? What? Oh, we do. What do you mean a real guest? We've had guests before in the. Oh, okay. Well, that is something different. So you clean up some stuff. Get rid of the. We were talking about the burrito. Get rid of that thing. It's huge. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com. And on today's episode of the podcast, really super excited about this. We had Jon Towles join us, who's a Microsoft MVP, expert in basically everything endpoint management, mobility. And I had the pleasure to meet Jon going back a few months ago, kind of working out some of this migration stuff, going from VMware to Intune, and asked him to join us on the podcast, and he was gracious enough to accept. So, we ended up talking for a long time, couldn't fit all of it in here, but I think without a doubt, this is one of the most exciting podcasts we've done yet, and really excited to share this with you guys. So, without further ado, enjoy. Take that burrito and just throw it. Just toss it.
4, 3, 2, 1. I'll get your Ghostbuster plate behind you.
The plate?
Door.
Yeah, I got that right off their car. Yeah.
I think my kids a Kung Fu Panda last week.
Kung Fu Panda's always good.
I can always be on board with some Jack Black. Sure. Jon Towles, mobile-john.com. I'm a mobile technologist and user computing architect. Been in the space for probably 13, 14 years. Used to work at BlackBerry, FinTech. Currently me and my wife own about a $10 million pharmaceutical company. And as part of that is my consulting practice, along with being obviously a Microsoft MVP, soon to be former VMware vExpert.
Yeah, man. So I mean, it's killer cred. I mean, you're in the endpoint space, the endpoint management space. I think more so than anyone else. Generally the folks we talk to. So that's pretty awesome.
For better or worse, right?
For better or worse. When I started doing Windows management, it was briefly with AirWatch, before we even got our hands on. I mean, like right when Windows 10 came out. We looked at AirWatch first, and then we pivoted to Microsoft.
The good days before Microsoft was like, "Oh, you want to do co-management? No."
Bro.
I was gonna say F you, but I'm trying to clean. But yeah, I remember that, like, when that happened, like, that was like D-Day for like every company that was looking at Workspace One Windows management, because most teams, just as soon as that shit hit the fan and they said, "Yeah, we're killing co-management," almost everybody turtled. Like, a few people were able to kind of tough it out and shift and handle it, but a lot of people kind of freaked out, and then they just said, "Okay, we're not going to do it anymore," and they went Intune or whatever, because obviously Microsoft holds the cards, and if you don't like it, enjoy Google Workspace.
Well, I guess that's the thing, right? Talking about that history, because for me, it always felt like for working in IT, I always felt like I'm getting into fights with people constantly. From pitching Azure Join in the beginning to talking about you don't need SCCM. I mean, I didn't work with SCCM before 2016, but those admins came right after me. Everyone doesn't everyone wants to go down with a ship, which is
I wasn't doing Windows till I think 2018, 2019. That's like when we started, because I spoke at Dell Tech World on what was called Dell provisioning at the time, which is now dropship provisioning, which is pre-provisioning and white glove.
It's there, yeah. It's there pre-provisioning.
Kind of changed that name though, but yeah, and I hadn't done it at all, and so that's when I first started learning SCCM, because I had to kind of figure it out, because they had this thing called Forklift, which you'd use it. It was API driven. It would connect into your SCCM instance, and it would basically lift and shift stuff from SCCM into Workspace One. And yeah, when I spoke at Dell Tech World, this was in 2019, so many grizzlied SCCM admins that no, they were pissed. None of them wanted this. They're like, "Get out of here. This is my job you're messing with." It's incredibly hard, right? Because what I would tell every single client is, if your Windows team and your mobile team are the same team, then this is easy. But when those are two different teams, it's a complete nightmare, because
Yeah.
just the politics and like the fighting and like, like it's like what pass the hash is now, right? And I'm sure you deal with that all the time, where you have these teams, these companies fighting you. Oh, we don't want to do pass the hash, blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, then you don't want to do Windows Hello. I don't want to tell you, but
Exactly.
hard.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I remember the early days of like sitting with some pretty large companies and like pitching this idea to them, and the Windows folks were literally baffled. But if there was MDM people in the room, or like Jamf Mac guys, they were like, yeah, we do this. We know exactly what you're talking about. You're treating the PC like a mobile device now. And they were like 100% on board immediately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're seeing a lot. So I'm seeing a lot of this, and you and I were talking about this this week, right? Is that there's a lot of people are coming here, and they're like, oh, so I'm not really a sales guy, so I partner with like companies, and they ship stuff over to me. And one of the main company that I'm partnering with, they're like, oh yeah, they're using Clonezilla.
I've been, no, you're right. Like I'd start doing that cloud native series because it came to a point where I've talked about this so much, but I ask people why all the time. I mean, companies have these policies. It's like, look, your goal isn't to set the policy. Your goal is to achieve something. Like, why are we getting real tight about how we do it if we can do it and it's a new way? It's like,
it comes down to just, I'm gonna get trouble again. Don't be shitty. I mean, just, okay, so if things are changing, okay, don't fight it. Like, do things that make sense. Focus on user experience.
Going from imaging to autopilot, instead of like convincing people back when I started working on it, people are coming now and saying, hey, I don't want to image anymore, which they shouldn't anymore. Like, it's,
Yep. I think the worst thing about autopilot is how hard vendors make it for you to onboard to autopilot. It's insane. Like it frustrates. So I was dealing with I'm just gonna start dropping vendors' names.
I
was trying to deal with CDW this week.
Okay.
Trying to get them to onboard me to autopilot. I ordered one of the new AI PCs from Dell. Was supposed to be an autopilot. Clearly not an autopilot, as it prompted me for credentials to enroll, and I was like, yeah, this is a big fail. I can't even get CW to call me back to get autopilot up and running, because I want to shift off of Dell, since obviously going into from my former friends Workspace One. So I'm going to start moving away from Dell, and I want to buy Surfaces. I wish Microsoft you could just buy stuff direct from Microsoft with autopilot. Like, that would be,
it's weird. Well, they have the business store too. You can just go on their business store and buy a pro, one of the new stuff, but you can't do autopilot.
They make you go to a partner. I was looking at it because I wanted to buy one of the new Surfaces, and so I can't buy a new Surface until I, freaking get somebody to onboard me to autopilot. So I'm probably just gonna go try another vendor or something, because they make it super hard. Like, it should just be easy. I mean, at least with Dell, you literally give you a link, you click on it, and you just approve them as an OEM.
That's what we do. It's an API. Like, that's what I don't understand. I've heard that, not just, against anybody, but like I've heard some vendors still want to go through that CSV process. And it's like, I tell customers, like, if someone's going to send you a CSV or asking you, walk away, because there is an API that just serial number, it's up there. Like, it's automated.
Beyond that, like, you should be able to sign up for autopilot online. You shouldn't have to go through like all these bells and whistles.
I agree.
I mean, this is like with I was talking about with Windows Auto Patch, is like, if the whole idea is to eliminate problems and to like make things better and security, blah 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 blah. Like, that's why I was saying, I was talking to somebody at Microsoft. I think it was my Australian friend Steve, and I was telling him is that they need to open up Auto Patch to third party MDM. Like, I like do stuff to make things more inclusive to eliminate problems. Because I mean, with all the ransomware and the foreign and all the attackers and all the the red team, blue team stuff, like, they need to make all these things easier, so people are more willing to do it. Like, autopilot, I think, is one of those things.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a lot of work and a lot of answers on autopilot, I think, after some of the conversations.
Well, and that's what it is. I think you called it out. You used the word the other day in one of the posts I did. You used the word grandstanding. And I like that, because it happens so much with things where people like get caught up in a side, like, because I'm very obviously pro Microsoft, but I literally call this, in jest, I called the autopilot hole an emergency. And you would think the taco wearing the fire hat would show the sarcasm, but some folks are like, it's not an emergency. It's like, okay, let's calm down. It's not an emergency, but look what I did on video. I took a personal device and I put it in with no problem.
Well, like I said to you, right? Like if you you know, like, and I've had my own issues if people read far too much into the meme and don't actually read the content. But it's like, you know, at the end of the day, right? Like, and we know this with Apple, right? Is that when you have a device that's fast laned, then it ignores like everything, which I don't think is great. But like, yeah, because like if you enroll a device in DEP, it ignores like all your enrollment restrictions and blah blah.
Yeah.
Like that's considered like implicitly trusted, and it's just like, and that's the problem. And I think that the real disconnect I think they get that they don't understand is that conditional access is not Robitussin. You can't just say conditional access. Because I mean, how many Intune admins actually have rights to actually create, modify, or even view conditional access policies?
They don't. They won't by default.
I looked at.
They don't. Yeah.
Global administrator.
Yep.
Security administrator, I believe. I think some other like stupid.
Yeah, it's not. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, it's not Intune admin by default.
Yeah, because you know, with someone who has ADHD, I'm always worried about people, you know, wee slapping me. And so I actually went and I looked to see, okay, so because after I said, okay, I better go check this and I'll go delete the tweet if I screwed up here. And I looked it up. And yeah, truth be told, yeah, security administrator, global, like most Intune people don't have access there. I mean, literally, from my perspective, there should be something in enrollment restrictions to be able to shut off, to be able to control what aspects of what different ways you can do autopilot. There's 3 options, right? Like realistically speaking, you should be able to disable or enable the ability to even use that feature. I mean, because I mean, it's a hole. Whether you use it or not, it is a hole.
It is. That's why I was like, that guy seems to like, you know, kind of brush over it. But the thing I saw when I looked in the graph, and I must have seen it, never noticed it before, because the thing I showed was what they wrote the blog on, the enrollment name, but there's actually the autopilot enrolled true or false. And that correlated to, does it show in the list? And it does. Yeah. It's like, so you clearly have a marker. That should be a switch somewhere in Intune. Make it your choice, you know.
Unless you do something really crazy, right? And like you take that JSON file.
Yeah.
And you basically have some kind of code that would go out. It would basically do an API call, say Cyber, and it would pull the key information out of CyberArk and then do like a replace inside of the file and then operate the file live and clean up, or something that's actually not just, hey, I have a file.
Yeah.
You have to really work friggin' the amount of work you'd have to do. I keep having to try to censor myself in my head, but like the amount of work that you'd actually have to do in order to make that robust is kind of bad. And like I said, conditional access, you can't just, people who don't have real world experience, they don't understand that Intune admins don't have access to conditional access. So you have to make it inclusive for them. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that they need to realize.
Well, I tried to explain it away at first, and I was telling someone, this was a few months ago, when it came up once, and I was like, "Now you would need to know about autopilot, know about the JSON." And then someone said to me, "Yeah, you moron, hackers and malicious actors, this is the least of their trouble to know about. They're way smarter than that. They could crack this no problem."
It's something you can buy on a Dell laptop. I mean, it's not like it's a secret, you know,
no, it's not
secret fraternity of brothers with a secret handshake in the basement of some like, you know, science lab on campus. I mean, people know about it. It's not like it's not a new. I mean, there's talks about it. I mean,
yeah. I want to shift real quick the migration, because that's how we kind of hooked up over the migration thing. One of my older versions where I was still didn't get the profile right, but I was originally, this came from just going Intune to Intune, and then you hit me up and said, "Hey, could we go from," you know, and I had no idea about the VMware APIs and everything. So I guess you know, you think, I guess there's going to be a need for that? You see a lot of folks moving from one to the other, or?
That's what I've been hearing. I mean, so I know of like some of the largest VMware partners who even actually want me to do talks on this, like for their people, because I think they see the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
There's, in a day, right, you're dealing with uncertainty. In certain sectors, uncertainty is basically, you know, that's the mark of death. So I mean, because you don't know what you don't know, right? What like, it's like, what do you fundamentally know? You know that some of their brightest talent on the EUC side have jumped ship in the last, say, 3 years to OneTrust, Google, Microsoft, whoever, that's something you fundamentally know.
Yeah.
You know that in the last 3 years, they whatever you call them, Gartner's, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But Microsoft has overtaken VMware because Gartner's feels that Microsoft is executing better. So I mean, that's something, because I mean, that's the thing we know, right? Like, so I always call Gartner's like that thing that it's just like one of your friends having an opinion on your girlfriend. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these things that you fundamentally know, and then you have things that you feel like. You feel not great when an equity company buys a tech company, because we know historically, if we look at the writing on the wall, like
Yeah.
Avanti, like these different ones, stuff has not always been great for like growth and for innovation. Even though they're saying the right things right now, you just don't know.
No, it's true. Yeah.
My creed has always been 100% single platform for everything. Period. Because I mean, you especially, you have a lot of, more often than not, I mean, even in the last, like, say 7 years, it took a really long time for people just to start even like hiring a dedicated mobile person.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah, sure.
When it actually happened. Those teams aren't, for the most part, aren't large. I mean, so you're gonna have 2-3 platforms that you're managing stuff on. It just doesn't make, I don't think it makes fundamental sense. So I mean, I've always felt like, a single platform, whatever the platform was. And for me, it's been a two horse race for the last 5 years between VMware and Microsoft. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I have heard quite a bit of people have shifted to Intune, and other people have plans. I mean, this is kind of like the hypervisor Hunger Games that's going on right now. I know we're gonna have, maybe not to that degree, but you are gonna have people that are gonna start, at a minimum, start POCing it and saying, okay, do we actually want to do that? I mean, like, I have one client who I'm doing an imaging project for now. They decided to stay with AirWatch. They call it AirWatch still, that's what we all call it still.
I call it AirWatch.
Yeah, that's what their people know. I mean, and then they're going to stay with it. And I even laid it out. You have 2 options, and I always tell them, with AirWatch, Workspace One, AirWatch, that it's a little harder to run than Intune, but you can run it at a fairly similar level, but you need a lot more scripting and code experience than the other one. And it's like, I mean, for me, Intune, honestly, at the end of the day, really is an easy button, between GPO imports and all this stuff. And but yeah, I do think that you are, not just me, but other partners are getting a lot of customers starting to ask the questions. And so yeah, I think that we do need to be ready. Your Intune migration utility, like I said, you've done a great job in the last year, taking it from where it was to like modularizing it.
Yeah.
Because you love Microsoft Teams so much, you're like, I'm gonna do what new Teams is doing. I'm gonna modularize the entire platform.
Yeah.
You made it all modularized. Not that that's a word, but you made it all modularized, and it makes it nice, because like, especially like if you're someone who doesn't understand code, and there's this, it's remarkable how many people they're administrators, right? They're just not that versed, and making it so they can look at a single piece. And just look at that, and as someone who, like I said, who needs to tune out the noise with having ADHD, I think it's really helpful, especially like if you want to kind of essentially modify it and make it what's good for you. It really does. I think it does lend, once you actually understand how it works, it lends for being able to taking it and amplifying it, using it in a way that works for you, which is what I did. Is I took your thing and I said, okay, these are the things I actually need. And I've kind of worked through it. I think many people that you probably aren't even aware of have taken your code and said, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to retrofit it to my needs, because I guess at the end of the day, we're all in it together. So we all have the same goal. So it's all about just kind of trying to get there, and just realizing, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. It's all about what kind of experience you want to give to people.
That's been awesome, because people can say to me, yo, this sucks. This thing you wrote sucks. And I know that now, because it's hard when you're in a bubble to do it. But I think that I was just amazed, because this came about 2 years ago. Microsoft, I had a customer, 15,000 users, and they were migrating. And when Microsoft said you have to wipe and re-enroll each one, they said, we will not do that. And that's where this came from. That was very bare bones, but I was more obsessed with being like, wow, it worked. I left tenant A, I'm in tenant B, I'm good. Didn't consider user experience at the time.
It's so complicated too. So I was one of the first people to write automation for Dell Command Update, for example. We get a lot of that all the time, because, and the problem is that there's so many things that can be different because like you've got different versions of apps that they're running and this stuff like because like for example the stuff that we've been working on with the tool,
Yeah.
you know, we have people who are so on Workspace One they have this thing called SFD, which is basically the little microservice on the desktop that control the actual deployment of the apps, kind of like the Intune management extension, right? And so like we've obviously, you know, I've heard of people like I was telling you about like that, like where for some reason that SFD service never updated, and so when they actually went and they did the migration, it was whacking their apps because the SFD was not on a supported version. I dealt with the same stuff with Dell Command Update, where like stupid, you know, Dell OEM would install some crappy like I don't know like Apex whatever package, or like there's just so many things, and you constantly have to kind of like update code and reevaluate and say, okay, here's something I didn't account for because I never saw this in my testing, and you're constantly having to kind of okay, so this is what the thing is, and just okay, I need to shift and update. I mean, that's the thing, right? And yeah, people Reddit, you know, people pull Reddit on us all the time, and we're not even in Reddit, where they're just like, you suck. And it's just like, you know, it's this thing about like, you know, okay, we must not suck that much because you actually looked at it and tried to use it. So it's more about like, okay, you didn't get it you didn't get what you were looking for. So okay, so how do we actually do that? And right, and that's about like, okay, looking at and figuring out. And
yeah, the funny thing is when I got my first, I had a first YouTube hater who he wrote 2 full paragraphs, and I'm reading it, I'm like, well, he definitely watched the whole thing, because some of the stuff he was mad at me for I said at the end. So there you go, he watched the whole thing. So cool. But it's good. Someone took the migration thing, they added Defender for endpoint onboarding and offboarding in it, obviously. So I have tested your I figure we'll do another video at some point where we can actually run through it to show it. But I did finally get a lab going. I went through it, put your code and, you know, my code in the API, and once because I was like intimidated because I didn't work with VMware APIs. As soon as I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. It's like kind of the same thing. Well, neither is Microsoft's. So
the problem with VMware is it's friggin' 4 versions. So it's like
I saw that
if you have to run commands in 4 different, and the funny thing is like V4 will have like 10 API commands. Like it's not like they took everything. It's like specific things.
Yeah.
So it becomes a real pain in the ass. You have to play headers Jenga, depending on certain stuff that you're doing. Because there's an amazing guy who worked for VMware named Chris Halstead, lives in Michigan, and he did a session like 4 or 5 years ago on basically writing API tools in Workspace One, and that's when I started getting interested in APIs.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I built a lot of API tools for certain things, like for like adding people to these like smart groups, which you couldn't add people by bulk, or like main thing is I had like a whole thing I wrote for like app deployment days, where you basically, okay, this would force all devices to query and all devices to sync, because you couldn't force all devices to sync in Workspace One. And yes, so, like I learned like stealing a lot of like that kind of stuff with the API, and then like I said, talking to people about it, like kind of like what they needed to do. So it's like nice that like, you know, just like being able to use the API to say like let apps persist and that kind of thing.
You know, I reposted I think the blogs you have now, the VMware person's guide to Intune, is like, I mean, I've been showing people it's lighting up. There's nothing like that. There's no one who's agnostic enough or sensible enough to let that go and say, look, I'm going to help you. Like, it's not about VMware worse Intune. It's about, if you're in this boat, here's what to expect. And it's thorough. So
yeah, there's not even any opinions like, oh, this sucks. This is good. Yeah, it's just like literally, this is what you can do. And and I've gotten some feedback and I've updated. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that bloggers make. Yeah. Is that one, they're not open to feedback. 2, they don't engage with people. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback. And then so like I've actually things I just like escaped my mind. Like I didn't realize that the Microsoft tunnel was not available on Mac OS and desktop. Like I just like little things like that, people bring it up. Oh, like I totally forgot about that. And so like I, you know, take the blog and use stuff like that. And it's just like that's the thing, and that's the thing that I've always hated when I was reading other people's blogs, is that there are certain people, and they'll remain nameless, is that I would post stuff on their blog or ask questions, they didn't respond. It's like that's the thing I've always cared a lot about, is kind of engaging with people, and then like, you know what, if you're wrong, you're wrong. It's like this whole defensive bullshit of like the network, the firewall guy said, oh, I didn't change anything. Hey, it's okay.
Everyone, there's so much ego. There's so much ego, and it's when it gets in the way of the final product is when it's a problem in the tech and the whatever. So, I mean, screw up, you know, it's okay. It's cool. I mean, if shit goes wrong. You just, you know, you adapt, you learn from it, try not to make the same mistake twice. I mean, you know, I really appreciate you doing this.
No, I just like talking tech, and I appreciate you including me.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Yeah, I think this is gonna be a good one.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, bro.
4, 3